In this video, I'm going to be combining 10 Hogwarts Castle sets to create what LEGO is calling the biggest and most detailed version of Hogwarts ever. The latest wave of LEGO Harry Potter sets expanded onto the castle, giving us 2 new pieces. The first of which was this small herbology greenhouse, and the other is the largest and most expensive Hogwarts Castle playset that we have ever gotten. And that comes in the form of the main tower, which combines perfectly with the Great Hall from last year. At this point, we're only in our second year since this system came out, and we already have 10 different pieces that you can get inside this entire Hogwarts Castle collection. And yet we are very far from having a complete silhouette. All of the sets add up very quickly, currently costing you $793 US if you were to buy every single set. For reference, you might be familiar with this Hogwarts Castle, which is a micro scale version of it, and it depicts the entire castle for only $470, which is still incredibly expensive. However, it's already almost half the cost of an incomplete system, which is kind of insane. And as much as I love that micro scale one, this newer system definitely has a lot of benefits and is superior in many ways. One of my favorite aspects of it is the fact that there are a lot more minifigures included in these sets. It's also built in a more minifigure-esque scale, which I absolutely love. There's also considerably more detail both on the interior and exterior, and you can also just pick and choose what pieces you want. The first bunch of sets we're going to take a look at are the classrooms. Now in this little subsection, there are potions, charms, dueling, herbology, and the flying lesson. And the reason I've grouped all of these classrooms together is because these sets are more like replacements on the existing Hogwarts Castle system rather than expansions to it necessarily. However, these two, the flying lesson and herbology, kind of fall somewhere in the middle. The potions and charms classroom are very similar in that they are designed to fit in the bottom of the larger Hogwarts Castle sections. They can fold out and be swapped out with many of the other rooms, including the girls' bathroom or the chamber of winged keys, in order to make your Hogwarts interior feel a little bit more fleshed out and lived in. Neither of these necessarily work to actually expand Hogwarts, however, because it requires you to remove pieces of the already existing sets in order to slot these in properly. The dueling club is similar in this way, however, it is very notably not an exact classroom, and it's actually something that you swap out inside of the Great Hall instead of having the regular tables for the feast. And in terms of a set being branded under the Hogwarts Castle, this is definitely the weakest and least Hogwarts Castle feeling set of the bunch. However, when it comes to herbology and the flying lesson, these are definitely more fleshed out versions of classroom and can actually expand on the Hogwarts Castle exterior's footprint a little bit. But that being said, it is really difficult to connect either of these in a notable way that feels like it blends in with the castle. The flying lesson does have a couple of those clips, although because of the way that this set is designed and built, it doesn't really fit in very nicely. So if you're wanting to have a super detailed version of Hogwarts but don't necessarily care about the interior, I really feel like you could skip all 3 of these sets. And when it comes to these 2, the only one I would necessarily recommend getting is the herbology greenhouse, since it actually does seem to properly kind of blend in, even though it doesn't have any connection points, whereas the flying lesson just feels like it is its own little standalone thing and doesn't necessarily add any value to a giant Hogwarts system. On the other hand, there are sets like Hagrid's Hut, the Owlry, the Boathouse, the Great Hall, and the main tower that really allow your Hogwarts floor plan to start taking shape, especially in the case of these 2. Even though Hagrid's Hut and the Owlry don't directly attach to the Hogwarts Castle system, I do think they are really important in establishing your Hogwarts grounds, whereas the Boathouse, the Great Hall, and the main tower are really where your Hogwarts silhouette starts to take shape. These 3 are the key pieces to the ultimate system that LEGO is going for, and all connect seamlessly and create a very large but very impressive minifigure-esque scale Hogwarts Castle. Unfortunately though, these are all the priciest out of the bunch, and even with just these 3, you are still going to be spending more than that micro-scale Hogwarts Castle. This tower alone is going to set you back $260, let alone the Great Hall, which is another $200. It is an absolutely massive ask, and especially out of these 2, I do think the tower adds just a little bit more just because of the fact that it is so tall and grand. And with each of these 3 little pieces, there is a variety of clip and bar pieces so that you can attach each piece to each other to create this seamless, beautiful tower. The Boathouse snaps to the front of the Great Hall steps, and then the tower snaps to the back of the Great Hall. And the interesting thing with all 3 of these sets as well is that they are all based off the Philosopher's Stone, which means if you buy them all, you will have quite a wide variety of main Philosopher's Stone characters, with the only real duplicate being Dumbledore, since his minifigure doesn't really change all that much. When combined, these 3 sets alone measure out to be 68 centimeters or 26.5 inches wide, 58.5 centimeters or 23 inches deep, and 68.5 or 27 inches tall, which is absolutely insane. Now that being said, combining these 3 pieces pieces together for the first time and seeing it all together is absolutely mind-blowing and looks incredible. It does raise a few questions though to how big this system is actually going to be in the end and how many more years are we going to keep up with this. This by far is my favorite Hogwarts castle system that they have ever done. I love these sets. I love the way they look. I love the way that they combine. However, this thing is very, very demanding when it comes to space, and I'd argue that it is going to be harder to display than that micro-scale Hogwarts castle is. When combining everything together, I really like to put the potions and charms classroom in the bottom of the Great Hall because I feel like it makes it look a little bit better, and I swap them out with the girls' bathroom as well as that portrait hallway because I really don't think they add too much. Right now, the greenhouses and the flying lesson are the hardest to incorporate as I really cannot find a good place to put them, and I'm hoping that that changes the more bigger pieces we have to add on because even with the clips in the flying lesson, it just does not work. Much like last year, I like to keep the Owlery and Hagrid's hut off to the side so it feels as close as it does in universe. But with the main tower being an addition, I can really see what LEGO was going for when they said this was going to be the biggest and most detailed Hogwarts castle ever because it is really starting to come together. And as cool as it is to see all together, I do think it is very unrealistic to buy all of the pieces and have it on display at all times just because I think it is going to be far too expensive and far too big to actually reasonably put on a shelf at all. Like right now I'm having to use an entire desk table and I feel like you're going to need a giant dining table or something by the time that this is done, but I am really excited to see how they expand on it from here. I would love to see the clock tower or the viaduct bridge. I can also see the astronomy tower possibly being an option very soon because I really think we kind of need to keep moving to the left rather than backwards because otherwise this is going to be a little bit much. But let me know what you think about the current Hogwarts system all combined together, and if you want my in-depth thoughts on these sets, I will leave links to my reviews at the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing to my channel down below, and until next time, I'll see you later.